Good morning. Welcome you all to Professor Ashok Agarwala's 50th anniversary celebration. It's a pretty exciting event. And we had a great dinner last night. We were very intimate some storytelling and conversation with Ashok and his students. And that was like, I got to caught up with some of the old timers and some new faces that I had not seen in the PhD. I am PhD number 8, Ashok's PhD. I graduated in 1982. I seen a lot both professors that we like eight that long in the lineage, but I'm only 40, there are 44 people behind me. So that feels like a long time ago, if I was only 44. So I'm number 8, graduated in 82, and it's my really privilege to introduce Professor Matthias Zwicker, who is a computer science chair, distinguished professor in computer science chair, and providing all the leadership. And today, he's a very special man because he hosted this. He's a host of this whole event because he being the department chair in his department, and Matthew is very generous to provide the support for this event. Matthew.
Yeah, sure. I just want to start by thanking the actual organizing team of the event who did all the hard work to put this event together. And that's Ashok Agarwala, who just spoke, Ming Lin, who will speak afterwards, and also Miriam Friedman, our event coordinator. So thank you all for organizing this. It is my huge pleasure to welcome you today, alumni, current students, colleagues, former colleagues, including former chairs also, and friends and family to this event here to celebrate Ashok's 50th or 50 years of service at the University of Maryland. That is a truly monumental achievement. I'm in awe of this. Few of us will achieve something comparable. And yeah, I'm so glad that we're coming here together today to celebrate this. We just heard, if you did the math, and you added 8 and 44, the two numbers that Ashok mentioned, that Ashok Agarwala mentioned, that Ashok Agarwala had supervised 52 PhD students so far. And that is really, really amazing. So many lives touched, and so many careers started. And it wasn't only graduate and PhD students, it's also undergrad students, literally hundreds of them, that Ashok has worked with, and that has made an enormous impact on so many lives. So when we had a department retreat just earlier this week, and one thing we talked about was the values, that underlie what we're doing here. And in the discussion, one thing that came up was cura personalis. So yes, we speak Latin also in this department, among many other languages, and cura personalis means care for the whole person. And when I was thinking about this event today and about Ashok, I really realized that this is a value that he embodies in the department with his enormous care and engagement for all the students that he has worked with and that he has guided, to successful careers and fulfilling careers. So I think this is, Ashok has been an enormous role model in the department and continues to be an enormous role model in our department. And for this, I want to thank him very much and congratulate him for this huge achievement. Thank you, and I hope you will enjoy our event today.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and thank you for your support. So next I want to introduce our co-organizer, and she's going to take over the whole event for this particular event. And that's Professor Ming Lin. So Ming Lin is a distinguished professor. She came to us from North Carolina, and she came as a chair for the department, and now she's a professor here. But when she's in North Carolina, she spent 20 years over there, and she already was a very distinguished professor and a very, very illustrious, very incredible career already behind her at that point. And I was looking at her BTNs over there, so listing all her different accomplishments and so forth. I think I'll be cutting seriously into this, the time of this particular event, so I'm not gonna go through that stuff. But I do want to mention that her research interests include computational robotics, haptics, physically based modeling, virtual reality, sound rendering, and geometric computing. But not only she's a great researcher and a teacher and faculty, she's also an entrepreneur. She's already patented her research and launched a company based on her research and already sold the company too. So she's a very successful entrepreneur, and Chuck, you should talk, maybe you should talk to Chuck Rieger, who was also a professor here, and he's a serial entrepreneur. And maybe we can get a couple of hints about how to do this more times than what you like done. Please welcome Professor Rieger.
Thank you, Ashok. So it really has been a pleasure organizing this event. So first of all, I want to thank everybody being here, all the alumni and colleagues and friends and family of Ashok. And many of you have flown from all over the country. And for me, this is really touching. Of course, I have gotten to know Ashok for the last 5 years, and we work together on several initiatives. And also he has given me many advice throughout some of the, challenges I have to deal with. After all, I'm a newcomer running a very big department of 4,000 students. We are a gigantic ship, very, very big ship. And Ashok is very, very much integral part of this very big family. We have today over 55 faculty tenure track and dozens of instructors. And I think many of us look up to him as a role model. And he has, just like Matthias has mentioned, he cares, he really cares. He's an integral part of this very, very successful department, running, I used to say we are like a gigantic ship sailing in the ocean, and that its only reason it sells so well is we have a senior faculty like Ashok, who has been sort of steadily contributing behind the scene, helping the students. As we have seen, many of these very successful students are here today. And many of you are today doing tremendously well. You are a leader in your own field. And I already have mentioned yesterday, I could not believe when I looked at his paper, 15 different subject and area he has worked on. So anyway, without further ado, I also would like to introduce some of my colleagues. But before I do that, I would like to play a remark from our dean, and these various people will showcase and talk about, what Ashok has done in a very concrete sense, and they will tell their own story. Okay, top.
Hello, I am Amitabh Varshney, Professor of Computer Science and Dean of the College of Computer, Mathematical and Natural Sciences. While I'm sad to miss this celebration honoring Professor Ashok Agarwala, I am thrilled to be able to share my congratulations virtually while I'm on a trip visiting some of our computer science alumni in California. I'm proud to call Ashok Agarwala a colleague and a friend. For 50 years, it has been nearly impossible to talk about the Department of Computer Science at the University of Maryland without talking about Ashok Agarwala. Before I joined the department in 2000, I knew of Ashok. And after I joined the department, I got to know him even better. He and his wife frequently invited my family and other CS faculty members, students, staff, and their families to their home. He always nurtured a kind and collegial culture in the department. I remember one year, he even contributed his own funds when the department didn't have enough money to host the holiday party. In his own research, Ashok has gained international renown for his work on the design, implementation, and performance of computer systems. He always surprised me with his sheer breadth of ideas, insights, imaginations, and connections, all the way from context-aware systems to the relationship between energy, mass, and information. We even have an algorithm named after him. He and his PhD student Glenn Reichert developed the Reichert-Agrawala algorithm for mutual exclusion in distributed systems. He has published hundreds of papers that have been cited tens of thousands of times. For the past 50 years, Ashok has been dedicated to his research and his students. In 2004, he was featured among the top 30 best nurturers of students in computer science. In 2000, Ashok received the university's Invention of the Year award for information sciences for his pinpoint technology, which is used for locating and synchronizing mobile wireless nodes. And in the years after that, his innovation has been unprecedented. Ashok's research on real-time systems even extends to real life. As one of the earliest Tesla drivers in Maryland, he accidentally summoned his car while teaching a class one day. The car dutifully backed out of his parking space into the middle of the parking lot, scaring a number of onlookers who couldn't imagine how a car could drive by itself. Ashok has always been so warm, courteous, and collegial. I have spent countless hours in his office enjoying his warm-hearted hospitality that would often be accompanied by hot espresso. On behalf of myself and everyone in the department, students, faculty, and staff, we would like to say, thank you, Ashok. Thank you for your service to the department, to our college, to the university, and to society at large. Your personal and academic legacy will remain strong in our department for many years to come.
Okay, I hope that remark is very clear, the impact Ashok has made already. Being Amitabh Varshni was also has been a faculty in this department for probably over 20 years. So he knows Ashok very well, and you know, Ashok treat many of the faculty like his own kids. So we all have enjoyed it, his hospitality, and in fact, our last best party was a dosa party at Ashok's house, right outside of his garage. We hosted a dosa station there. We all enjoyed it. We had such a great time post-pandemic party. So next, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who will also appear on the video, and that's Professor Satish Tripathi. He was also former faculty here in this department. Many of you know him. And he was also the former CS chair and at the University of Buffalo. So Tom, can you go ahead and play the recording?
Hi, Ashok. I'm so sorry I won't be able to participate with the celebration. I want to congratulate you for your 50 plus years of service at the University of Maryland. I still remember in 1977, I think it was in November or December, I was a graduate student and I was thinking about applying for jobs. And you told me, why don't you consider Maryland? And I think that's the best advice I got. I applied there and was able to join the systems group that you helped grow, but also you really created the environment where I could come in as a young assistant professor, work with a very smart set of students that you had attracted, and start my career there. Of course, we worked together quite a bit. We probably have published more than a couple of dozen papers together. We had multiple grants together. And I think we worked together not only in the office, but our families really gotten closer as well. And I remember, they still remember our trip from Paris to Rome, and you're driving, and really enjoyed the whole trip, but also many other trips that we have taken together. But what I really want to congratulate you on is your career of 50 plus years. You have changed with the disciplines. You're always enthusiastic about your research. You're always thinking ahead and choosing a discipline that really is going to make an impact. I still remember talking to you, and we were, as you remember, our offices were next to each other, and we were talking about some scheduling problem. And we came up with some really, really nice solutions. And then when Ed Kaufman was visiting, this paper became shorter and shorter, and number of authors increased, and we had a fun time doing research. I really think that the environment that was created at Maryland, the systems group that was created and that grew, and the kind of PhD students that you have guided, they have gone to become a major faculty member at the top universities. They've started their own companies, but they also have worked in industry and created new products and new research there as well. So as you celebrate this landmark, I wish I could be there. I wish both Kamlesh and I could be there, but we can't. I have to really attend a commencement, a law school commencement today. But I really wish you very, very best for the next many years at the University of Maryland. And I look forward to seeing you and celebrating with you when I visit Washington, D.C. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this celebration.
Okay, next, I'm going to introduce someone who had to drive almost 12 hours back. And he was also one of our former chair, a very distinguished faculty of this department, and who is currently also chair at Northwestern University, Samir Cooler. Thank you.
So great to see you all, great to be back despite the long drive. So I wrote out a long letter to Ashok, and I made the mistake of making a Google Doc of it. And then I realized that some of our earlier video speakers somehow sneaked access to the Google Doc. And so many of my comments that I was going to make have already been made. So I won't read out the letter, I will email it to Ashok later, but I just wanted to share a few things with you. First of all, congratulations, Ashok. 50 years is remarkable, and as we heard, the number of students who graduated exceeded 50. So that's a pretty impressive run rate. And most of us are still hoping to catch up, and we'll probably have to live to 100 to reach that milestone. What I want to share with you today is some remarkable things, which actually I was thinking about in Satish's talk, where he talked about how Ashok has sort of quickly changed with the times. And one thing that most of you might not realize is that Ashok has actually no degree in computer science. So Ashok studied electrical engineering in India and then applied mathematics at Harvard before he came to Maryland, and then he started teaching courses that he never had the chance to take himself. So that's super remarkable. I mean, majority of us trained in computer science in the 80s were fortunate to be teaching subjects that we were taught, but Ashok really sort of was a, I don't know, pioneer, adventurer in that way, that he jumped into a new field and began to create and teach courses. You also heard about the remarkable legacy and the systems group that he created at Maryland. So I just wanted to share a few other thoughts that I had in my interaction with Ashok over the last, I was at Maryland for almost 3 decades. So going back, I think when I became chair back about 10 years ago, 2012, is when I moved my office to the 4th floor. So I was on the 3rd floor. I only sort of made infrequent trips to the 4th floor of Avery Williams. But after I moved to the 4th floor, I realized that every morning I would take a break and do a walk on the entire floor. And the one door that was always open was Ashok's. So you already heard about his famous coffee machine. I definitely enjoyed coffee with him multiple times. But literally, you walk around 9:30 in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, the one door that was always open was Ashok's. And he always had time to chat with you, to find out what you were doing, what was happening in the department. And he truly cared for the students and all of the challenges the department had with the insane student growth that we experienced by going from like 1,000 students to over 3,000 over the 5 years that I was involved in that process. But thinking back, there are many things that I wanted to accomplish as chair, and I look back and I say, there were a number of ideas I had. Some of them let's not talk about, they just would be put in the category of ideas that seemed like a good idea at the time. But there were others, including like this building, and I wanted to share with you how significant a role Ashok played in shaping some of the things that happened over the ensuing period. So first, when I think back, I would say he always had a kind, supportive hand, and also really strong, encouraging advice. So let me mention maybe two episodes. So one was in early spring of 2013, we were planning a 40th anniversary party for the department. Okay? And so there was a lot of planning going on, and finally I called a faculty meeting as soon as the semester ended in May. I'll be honest with you guys, and we are among friends, this was the most depressing faculty meeting I've been to in my life. So why? In general, the feeling was that if we can't get one single individual who's our most famous graduate to come back and visit, nobody's going to attend the event. So the faculty won't come, the other students won't come, so we need this one person to come back. And I said, I've written several letters to this gentleman, he has not responded. And so I now left the meeting thinking that all this planning that I've been thinking about doing is all going to be completely pointless. And then the next day I went to Ashok's office and I said, what do you think? He was like, no, we should proceed right ahead. We should continue doing exactly what we're thinking. And this is a real opportunity for the department to reconnect with its graduates, and it's certainly very important. And he gave me immense amount of encouragement. He offered to chair the committee to host the event, right? And I would say that certainly made the department much more aware of what the alumni were up to. Stacy, Bill, and I spent the entire summer tracking our alumni, figuring out where they are through LinkedIn and so on, and finally created a mailing list of our own alumni. But at every step along the way, I just wanted to thank Ashok for his foresight and for his encouragement, especially at the moments when I truly needed it. So thank you, Ashok. The other part I wanted to share with you is that we organize a number of alumni events in California. And I wish Stacy Locke were here to share the initial struggles, because these were not common things for us to organize. We didn't have any experience doing it. We would sometimes find homes of alumni to host events. Sometimes we would book places and all that. And sometimes people would just register and say, I'm too busy to attend, and so on and so forth. But the one trump card which we had when a lot of people showed up to this dinner was Ashok. I just sent an email saying, hey, Professor Ashok is joining us on this trip. He is going to be there. And boom, 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 suddenly a whole bunch of RSVPs began to appear. So having Ashok there, and because that's something that I think we all have to realize, that the students look forward to reconnecting with faculty. And that's a very important component. And essentially, when we flew Ashok out to California, that was a game changer. And certainly after that, alumni events were also much better attended, for sure. But congratulations again, Ashok. I'm delighted to be back here. I would not have missed this event for anything in the world today, despite the long drive that being mentioned. Look forward to more decades of joyful interaction with you, love from you, advice from you. I still need the advice. That part hasn't changed. And that's it for my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. So next is my pleasure to introduce another one of our long-term serving faculty who has been here since the 80s, if I remember correctly. And that's our current associate chair, Professor of Computer Science, David Ma.
Thanks, Neem. And I would like to, I guess, echo Samir's remarks by saying, thanks everybody for coming today, and congratulations Ashok on this outstanding achievement. Normally, I guess in situations like this, it is, let's say, it would be my tendency to present a amusing anecdote or something like that regarding Ashok. Sometimes something might be embarrassing, but last night when I was listening to your remarks, Ashok is such a self-effacing person. He pretty much used all of my material in his own remarks. So let me perhaps hew a little bit closer to the truth than I would perhaps normally want to do by my better judgment. I'll go back to was kind of mean to introduce me as one of the older members of the department here, but I do remember back to 1984 when I first started in the computer science department as a fledgling assistant professor. Coming to the department, and as a new member in a department, you look to the senior faculty. And at the University of Maryland, that we had sort of these established group of the founding members of the department who played a very important role in sort of shaping and molding the direction the department took. And I'm thinking now really, luminaries, Ezra Rosenfeld, Jack Minker, Pete Stewart, and all the others that were Levine Canal, all the others that were sort of part of that very important founding group, including Ashok. What I remember at the faculty meetings, which is primarily where you would interact with these people, would be to find out kind of how they view the direction of the department and what are the fundamental things that we need to be thinking about in making our decisions. Over the various years and even decades that I've been in the department, in attending meetings, you get a chance to learn. You kind of almost can predict what people are going to say in a particular situation, okay, just by kind of understanding what values they are and how it is sort of what are the lenses by which they approach the various issues that come up in the department. And when it came to Ashok, I almost could always predict what the response was going to be to any given issue, because you would look at it from the lens of how it would affect people. And Matthias had mentioned this, and I guess a number of people had pointed about this as well. Ashok was always concerned with how the course of the department is going to influence the members, the people within the department. How our decisions were going to affect the students that we have, how is it going to affect their educational paths in order to achieve their objectives, graduating and so forth, how it was going to affect our graduate students, how are we going to support the members of the staff of the computer science department, as well as our junior faculty. Ashok was first and foremost always focused on these issues of caring for the members of the department. We had a faculty retreat, or actually a departmental retreat, just a few days ago. And during this retreat, one of the questions that Matthias had posed to the group was I think it was something like, what is the best thing about being in the computer science department? I'm maybe paraphrasing there. But this question was sort of asked to all the various groups, the little tables in the department. And the number one answer that was repeated was the people in the department. And I think that we all owe Ashok a great deal of appreciation for this, because this is the focus that Ashok has always harped on, has always focused on, has always brought us back to understanding. And Ashok, I want to express my own, appreciation for what you've done in the department, and just my pleasure at being your friend and colleague for all of these years. And thank you so much.
Thank you, David. So I would like to introduce another long-time serving faculty member, Howard Alman. Howard has been a faculty in this department for several decades as well. And also he's currently the director of our AMSC program.
Thank you. I think Ashok is gonna sound kind of boring by the end of this event, because everybody's basically saying the same thing, but I will have to say it again. So the thing about Ashok is that he really, he cares about the department, he cares about the university, and you never get a sense when you talk to Ashok that he's asking what's in it for Ashok. He's always trying to, I think, do the right thing. He embodies the ethos of what it means to really be a good academic. So I came here in 1985, also as a young, kind of inexperienced assistant professor. And one thing I was trying to do at that time is get a sense of what does it mean to get out there and look for research funding. And Ashok gave me some advice. He talked to me about some of his contacts in various agencies, and I made some phone calls, and they were very helpful. Okay. In my time here, I've done a lot of things, graduate director several times, and as people have already said, Ashok's door was always open. If there was an issue to discuss, he was there to discuss them. I mean, not everybody was that way, and if you needed some advice or some guidance about how to admit new graduate students in appropriate ways, you could always get some helpful advice from Ashok. Okay, my field and his are very different. His accomplishments in computer science speak for themselves, and everybody's already showcased them, but that didn't interfere at all with Ashok's being willing to help and doing things for the department. And he hasn't just done things for the department, he's been indefatigable in helping out with things in the university. He serves on many university committees concerned with support for the computer science department within the university, is a reliable spokesperson for the computer science department in affairs in the university, and he's done this for 50 years. It's been an incredibly strong career and incredibly helpful to all of us in computer science, and I want to thank him for that. So thank you, Ashok.
Thank you, Howard. All right, next, I was going to introduce Arwen Srinivasan, who has also been here since the 80s. Unfortunately, he has not been feeling well, but he really want to be here. So he sent his ambassador, his wife, Anu.
Good morning, and I apologize, Arvind couldn't be here today, but he wrote something for Ashok that I'd like to read out. And these are Arvind's words, and he said, the word that comes to me when I think of Ashok is giving. I have heard about his generosity through some of his grad students to whom he gave support, financial and otherwise, generously and thoughtfully. He has also been very giving of his time and care personally to my family and me. Thank you for inspiring us with your giving, Ashok, and wishing you excellent health and wishing us many more enjoyable times with you. And Ashok, you have been a father figure both to Arvind and to me, and we feel blessed to call you our family. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Anu. And I think that's exactly the correct word. Ashok is the father figure to many of us. And I think he has another son, adopted son, who would like to say a few words. Amo?
Right, so again, I'm probably going to end up repeating a few of the things that folks have said. But Ashok has been a pillar of strength and stability for the department for a long time, way before I even got here. And for relatively younger faculty like me, I think I can still say that given all the folks we have here, Ashok has been like a father figure. Right? We always rely on him for advice, personal matters, professional matters. He was always there for us. His door is always open, not just his office door, but his home also. I still remember biking out there on New Hampshire Avenue, past the last remnants of civilization, going up to his house and getting some refreshments and then coming back. I don't know if Ashok has, first time Ashok gave me directions, he told me, you get on New Hampshire Road, keep going, and when you think you are too far out, keep going. Eventually you'll get to our house. Even now, Ashok spends so much time working for the department. As Neil said, he really cares, he's still trying to do what he can. And many of those are behind the scenes. As an example, his efforts at making sure that the department's concerns on intellectual property policies were being represented was actually not known to many of us. I wasn't aware that he was working behind to make sure that the CSS view was kind of heard. More recently, he's been really working on trying to make sure that department continues to move in the right strategic direction. And all of this, of course, while continuing to do great research, advising students, and doing everything else that's planned for it. I can only hope that I have the same energy, enthusiasm, dedication, passion 33 years from now. Of course, Ashok will be celebrating his 83rd year in the department, and I suspect outworking most of us. So thank you, Ashok, for both, all you have done, both for me personally and for the department.
Okay, next, I'd like to introduce my other half, and who is also a faculty in this department, Dinesh Manocha.
Thank you and good morning. First of all, congratulations, sir.
For getting old.
Well, I think father figure is the right word, so just to say myself, as Ming said, both of North Carolina, I met Ashok for the first time in 1992. I don't even remember. I interviewed here. Dave Mond was my host. I was going with Satish for lunch. He was the chair. And there comes this man, and I think Satish introduced me to you. I still remember that some A.B. William building, but I went to North Carolina, spent a long time, we came here. So Ming and I had a big group at North Carolina. And of course, I think between two of us, she took the tougher job of chair, but we had 20 students in North Carolina, and now we have 35 students in Maryland. So just imagine last 4 or 5 years, you go down and go up. And yes, we have another company too, and other things going around. Even when I was interviewing in May, right after my graduate talk, I heard of Ashok. I didn't know him personally. I actually used to call him, and I still call him Manish's father. I'll tell you the story behind that, but there's other reason for it, but there's a connection. And he took me to a nice dinner to Jewel of India in his Tesla. And I also like gadgets. And he called his Tesla, there's a code name in Indian called Dhanno. And he's selling the department, and I'm like, learning Tesla, this is really cool. So I have a Tesla today, and the person to blame is you. Okay? Right. But anyway, even before I physically joined in May 2018, but in that year I was coming back and forth. Every time I would come, I would meet him. Yes, Samir, I also had coffee in his office. I also went to Jewel of India, Taj restaurants. I got all the advice, where to buy a house, where to do things, He's like the encyclopedia who knows everything, right? The campus, the department, the deans. Even today, every time there's an issue, I send him a text, Ashok, do you have a few minutes? And he knows if the nation is giving you a text, it will not be a few minutes. He knows it by now. But he still responds, right? And he is the go-to man for everything we have done. But one thing I would like to say, I don't want to repeat everything, So this is a great place. This building like this, all the people who are behind it, we are lucky to have it. There's so much going around, there's Adobe, there's Amazon, I'm also engineering, we just had Idea Factory. There's just so much going around. It's a really fun place to be in Maryland. But one thing which has happened, you heard about is, as Samir mentioned, Matthias mentioned, in last 8-9 years, you go from 1,000 to 4,000 students. The exponential growth bring all the challenges and recruitment, everything else. And there's been a lot of discussion going around. So last summer, I don't know what happened to Ashok. He went and led a big presentation, brought the whole faculty together over the summer. And I think for 4 weeks nonstop, he prepared this data, looking at numbers. Most people say, he's crazy. No, he genuinely cares. Literally, the effort that he did last summer to literally shape the future of the department, make a presentation to the president and the provost, bringing faculty together. And one thing I can tell you, for those not in academia, bringing 30 professors together is a nightmare. They're all super egos, okay? Including yours truly. But he brought us together, led the thing, give a vision. Based on his vision, we have a report, a strategic plan, which our president and dean are this week in California selling to some big donors. So thank you for all the foundation work you did. That's there. So that's it. But finally, on the first thing I would say, like in case Ashok, I only came to know him 5 years ago. But his son Manish, who will like to know, we're in the same field, graphics and visualization. So I know Manish since he was an undergrad. We were discussing from 95 and we meet each other. Now Manish is known as a genius. It is not a word I'm coming up with. MacArthur told he's a genius. So whenever I thought of Ashok, he's Manish's father or he's a MacArthur's father, right? So even I introduce everybody come to here, UMD, I would say come. Like a lot of people in my idea, graphic vision, oh, this is Professor Ashok Agarwala. He's a great system researcher, but he's Manish's father. But now that I get to know Ashok, I'll go to SIGGRAPH. I say, Manish, everybody, hey, he's Ashok's son, right? So it's how many times you see father-son couple. But now I just realized, let me tell you, we have a lot of computer science people in this place, this building. I have a lot of respect for real doctors, the MD. So now that I heard Geetika, I was not totally correct. You're Geetika's father, and you're Geetika's brother, because that's the one. But Ashok, thank you very much again. And this is, as one thing I would say in India, you reach 50, you're starting your second inning now, right? Like cricket, you start again, and the second inning has to be even better. Sorry. Thank you again for everything, sir.
Thank you, Dinesh. Okay. Next, I would like to introduce another one of our very long-serving faculty, who in fact is about to retire this year, and that's Udiya Shankar. Shankar has been here for over 40 years, 4 decades, if I'm correct. Yeah, 40 years.
So I'm not going to say that everyone's already spoken what I was going to say. So Ashok has worked in many different fields. And he has, one quality I admire in Ashok is he does things he likes to do. Things he does not like to do, they get done somehow. But the things he likes to do, he really, he's been doing that all the time. And he's worked in so many different areas that it's, it is hard to imagine. Deterministic network protocols, which at the time he introduced them, nobody thought they had any scope of going anywhere. Hard real-time operating systems. Again, he was, I think, the first to start on that. And he keeps, he keeps up with the times. So indoor location, determination, pinpoint, all this HCI stuff. I mean, he gets into something, he's not concerned that, he doesn't have experience in that area or anything like that. He just starts off into it. And he is very optimistic. I haven't seen another person who is so optimistic and has achieved success, great success. I mean, I've seen lots of optimistic. So there was a project, this was ages ago, a project review on the hard real-time operating system work. And the funding agency was also there for this review. I didn't go for the meeting, but like around lunch time, I went to get coffee from this office. And a PhD student who was attending that meeting, I saw him there, asked him, how's it going? He said, it's not going well. And these guys, the funding agencies have brought this consultant. I can't believe the way he speaks. I mean, he's insulting everything left and right. Okay. And then after a few hours again, I went for a cup of coffee and I see Ashok there. I asked him, how did it go? He wants to know too how it went.
I don't know.
Yeah. So he said, well, it was hard, and they have this consultant, he was saying, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, that. But I turned it around. I said, well, you want all these things to get done, you got to give more money and we'll do it. So anyway, that student was Department of a CS in Pittsburgh. He was the chair. Daniel Moshe. I mean, he was a Brazilian, and he was aghast at the language being used there. That's
Thank you, Shankar. So to close off the faculty's remark is going to be the last and one of our very, very original and very distinguished faculty of this department, also one of the longest serving faculty, and that's Professor Hanan Sameh.
What I wanted to do is to say a few things that others have usurped, okay? My first thing was, let me just see if the light, okay, the first thing was, okay. Is there a light? Is there a light? Okay, I don't really need the lights. It's just that the lights prevent me from slighting people. So if you feel slighted, you can look at my sheet of paper afterwards where your name is mentioned. What I wanted to, do you hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay, because I don't hear myself. Here? Okay. All right. Okay. Anyway, so my first word, we're going to be, talk about the students of Ashok. But before that, there was an interesting quote about Ashok not wanting to do things he doesn't want to do. And I had this statement written that we wrote about Levine Canal. Ashok and Levine are very tightly intertwined, whether you know it or not. And what we would say about Levine was, the day is not long enough not to do the things he doesn't want to do. With all of these negatives, if you didn't know Levine, you would just think about that he's still working on 10 years ago taxes, right? Anyway, Levine was okay. I wanted to say that because actually I came to Maryland because Chuck Rieger came here, and then he left. it was a big shock to me. But Levine and Ashok took me in under their wing at my start, and I'll never forget that. And later on, my work was recognized by Azrael Rosenfeld, and I joined that group with Larry Davis. But Levine had always had a very, Ashok had always had a very warm place in my heart for getting me going, because they were doing pattern recognition, and Ashok was really a leader in that. It's sort of amazing how he shifted over to another area. And his shift to the other area, I wasn't working in it, but I was very prominent. This was in systems where my thesis advisor was Vince Cerf, and I worked on the DARPA net before it started. So all the people in that area I knew. And so, when they would come to visit, Ashok would grab me, include me in their visits and everything. So the other thing that, so he sort of built up the systems group, and there were a lot of good people there in the department, but one person that nobody ever mentioned is David Mills. David Mills and Ashok were doing things, the 412, the operating systems course. David Mills is in the National Academy of Engineering. People don't know that, but he was a long-serving faculty member in the department. And my connection with Ashok here was that I had, even though I was in programming languages, nobody was really interested in what I did. And that is to say, 45 years later, their interest has picked up. Namely, the Grace Murray Hopper Award was given to someone, George Nekula at Berkeley, on proof carrying code, which I did in the early 70s and published in CACM. No one, but anyway, the point is, that was considered systems at that point, and we're doing verification. And so I was interested in operating systems. So David Mills and Ashok had or maybe David Mills mostly, had introduced the operating systems course, CMSC 412. And I decided that, students never finished it. Like out of 40 students, 3 finished. And so I decided maybe if I did the program myself, I could have a better feel for it. And Ashok encouraged me to do that. And lo and behold, we had 32 out of 35 people finish. And I taught it just for 1 year. And afterwards, Ashok took it over. And it's one of our most popular courses. So, many people don't realize Ashok's contribution in the operating systems course. I mean, other people teach it, but he was sort of the caretaker of it. Okay. Now, I mentioned, the systems group, and I may be remiss if I miss some people, but there was, of course, Satish, Suman Banerjee. There was, of course, Larry Dowdy. I don't know if if you haven't heard of Larry Dowdy, the next incarnation is David Mount. Now, you might not realize this. Dave, do you remember Larry Dowdy? He was a great tennis player, but he was actually a professional basketball player. I may be exaggerating on the professional, but
Not great professional, but excellent.
excellent. I mean, he apparently had played at Vanderbilt or something before, but the department's intramural standings rose up a lot with him. And I guess then we found out that he was a great tennis player. And, that's why I'm saying, Dave, you probably were not aware of that. Anyway, so what I want to say is Ashok built up this system group. And I think Larry, you worked with you, Karen, didn't he? You did something with Larry? Karen Gordon was one of Ashok's students, done really well. And so, as I said, Larry Dowdy, and there was somebody else that I was trying to remember. Oh, that Ashok recruited here. Oh, yes, we had Mehdi El-Sanadidi, who was, huh?
Mehdi El-Sanadidi.
Right, Mehdi El-Sanadidi from UCLA. That was supposed to get us the connection to UCLA, where a lot of the early networking work was being done. Okay, so you see, there's, quite a big group. There's also Scott Carson and Ivy Ramakrishnan were in that group. So finally, what I really was going to start with was the great students. And of course, there is this son, Manish, okay, whom I know as well from work in graphics, and we overlap a lot. And Manish had this very successful company that he sold to Microsoft called Line Drive, and it was on finding doing routes of travel with points of interest and little thing like a triptych if you know about AAA triptychs, it's like something that goes in your pocket. Anyway, after Manish, there are other really good students. They just didn't have the benefit of having access to a show 24/7, but they've done really well. And I wanted to mention some of them here. Of course, there was Suman Banerjee, professor at Wisconsin. Mustafa Yusuf is another one of Ashok's former students. His career is really skyrocketed. He's already an ACM fellow. He didn't graduate here that long ago. And so Mustafa Yusuf, Heba Ali, who worked with him in Ashok, who's at Amazon. As I mentioned, some of his students, of course, there's Glenn Reichert, and I sort of owe, he owes Glenn Reichert to me. Glenn's here. And why? Because Glenn, when I came to Maryland, I had worked on a language called SAIL, which was a fantastic programming language. And Glenn was the East Coast emissary. It was Jerry Feldman's group at Stanford, and Glenn Reichert by himself, and then Gary Knott at NIH. And Glenn was famous as having made the most fixes in TOPS 10 operating system. He was legendary. And when I came to Maryland, Glenn looked me up, and because of the interest in SAIL, and we became super, really fast friends. We spent holidays together and everything. And I told Glenn, you got to get a PhD. You got to get a PhD. And Glenn said, but who am I going to work with? I said, Ashok Agarwala. And it's a little known thing. And Glenn, and what was, I'm speaking about Glenn, but really Ashok helped to forge, his career. And just to give you an idea how small things matter. We at Maryland, the computer science department, and one thing I wanted to say is the title of my talk were the early years or something. Anyway, so at that time, Maryland was really the computer science center. And Azrael was a professor in the computer science center, as well as Werner Reinbold was a very famous numerical analyst, and really famous. And so they were in the computer science center. So they formed the computer science department, and Ashok knows this much better, as an offshoot of the center, but it was in the center. And so at that point, there was John Menard. He was the head of the computer science center. I guess he was leaving or something, and he needed a replacement. And I beat on Britt Kerwin. I said, Glenn Reichert is the man, okay, to do that. And with the university, how can we appoint a 25-year-old kid to be head of the computer science center? And he was, I'm almost done. Anyway, but
I know we got so many stories around.
yeah.
to tell, yeah.
All right,
Sorry.
and I didn't mention Ashok as another great student. So basically, I can stop, but then it's at the cost of the people I didn't mention.
Right. Well, that's okay.
All
I know
right.
we'll continue the stories at the.
All right,
at luncheon.
I feel like obligated to do this because I'm the only one here besides
Right.
Ashok
For
from
the
that
history.
time.
We have
Huh?
the history.
Yeah, so I thought that this would be of interest to people here to see how the department formed. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I've worked with Ashok students, Nick Bramsky and Faizan. I've worked with them. We had interesting papers. I worked with Heba. We don't have any paper because he didn't publish it. but she did a nice paper with me also. So I think that this, of the early years, there was also Jeff Moore. Oh, I didn't mention that Ashok, when I was here, Ashok was famous for being Tomlinson Rauscher's advisor. And I asked him today, last night, I tried to remember Tomlinson Rauscher's name and I couldn't. But what happens with my memory is that it's really pretty good. And if I don't remember something, a little time later, I will. And somebody today already commented to me on this. So these are the ones. I think I mentioned everybody.
Great. Well, thank you, Anand.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. Anand, stand.
I forgot John Agri, so don't kill me, John, because we've been super close. John was at my wedding as well, and nobody else can say that.
Great. Well, thank Hanan Samit, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to shift the gears a little bit. So I have, I mentioned in 1982 I graduated, and after graduation I went up to Boston area. And in Boston area, I said, Ashok, isn't there a Professor Ho over here? Ashok's advisor, Professor Ho. He's in the area? He says, yeah. He says, call him up. So I called up Professor Ho, Ashok's advisor. And Professor Ho said, why don't you come on over? And what you doing? So I told him about my PhD thesis. So I said, come on over, give us a presentation. So I got to go to Harvard and gave presentation to his group and some other folks at Harvard. And later on, I go around. I don't know how many of you have done it, his students, but I go around saying I actually met my grant advisor, right? So I have the bragging rights. So when we were talking about organizing this event, I wrote to Professor Ho. I said, would you be able to come? He said, well, I'm kind of tired, so I won't be able to come. But I do want to send a message to Ashok. So he sent a message, and I promised him that I'll personally read the message to you. Todd, can you put the slide up? There you go. So this is a message from Professor Ho, a brief message. It said, Dear Ashok, greetings and congratulations from your old friend, long time ago. As someone who walked with you on the field of pattern recognition, 50 plus years ago, I wandered off somewhere else, but you marched on to greater success in the subject of computer sciences. What a glorious journey you had in the 50 years since. As someone who preceded you in retirement, let me say, come on in, the water is fine. Now you can do what you damn well please. And as we've been hearing, he's been doing all along what he damn well pleases. There you go. So that's a message from Professor.
Thank you, Ashok. I want to thank all my colleagues for all your remarks. And I think that tells a lot of stories that I have not, had the privilege to know earlier. And it's great to hear that today, that even further highlight, Ashok's career and how he has impacted this department over time. Of course, Ashok has made tremendous scientific contribution in research, in scholarships, in education. And as many of you who are in academia, it's not possible without the support of our generous sponsor. So it's a privilege to play a little video or actually get somebody, Kirsty Bellman, who is one of the former DAPA program manager, to get on Zoom to say a few words. Tom, it's Kirsty there.
Yes, she's here.
Okay, would you like to go ahead? Yes, we can hear you.
But you're not gonna put the Zoom up?
Tom, can you please put her on the Zoom, please? Share the screen.
Anyway, this darn pandemic, Ashok, I so much wanted to be there, and this is yet another casualty of our weird last couple of years. I wanted to say a few remarks about Ashok, and what came to me, was a series of adjectives, which I'm going to read in a moment, and a lot of them are going to be a summary of what some of you said. But there's something I really want to emphasize. I have a series of adjectives for the human, and then I have a series of adjectives for the intellect. And I wanted to emphasize the human first, because we've gone through a very difficult period of time in American history. And I think it's really important that we focus on character also. Science is a community. And so many of you have emphasized how Ashok has contributed to community. And in my DARPA programs, I also saw how he contributed to community. So as a human, the words that for me characterize Ashok is warm, understanding, never bellicose, kind, never purposely crushing others to fulfill his own ambitions, a sense of humor and a sense of wonder at this world. And by the way, he's no father figure to me, he's my brother. And he introduced me as, his sister at a very special event in his family, and I was so thrilled and privileged. Okay, Ashok the intellect. Okay, broad-minded. Many of you have emphasized this, but it doesn't even begin to capture how many diverse interests he has had. Everything from Hindu philosophy, all sorts of different kinds of health ideas, all the way, of course, into wonderful things where he really introduced the notion of time into so many of our essential complex systems, real-time operating systems, time in so many ways. This is something that when we get to the technical part of the program, we'll actually focus on some of his accomplishments there. He's interested in everything, and yet he's very disciplined. So for somebody who has broad interest, he's not shallow, he's disciplined, he's deep, he's persistent. Even when other people are not interested, he is persistent, and he's creative. And together, Ashok and I did a lot of work over the years. I mean, we've had a very rich collaboration, lots of projects, lots of papers. A lot of our work was on new ways of sort of reasoning about and characterizing complex systems, and how to represent them, of course, computationally. Since meeting him on my DARPA programs, I can say that he became one of my dearest colleagues. Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you, Christy. I was wishing and hoping that you'd be here. And
I wanted to be there.
It is such a privilege to connect with you on Zoom. Your kind words touch my heart, as always. And I look forward to our meeting again face to face, and then shaking some unsolvable problems and chasing them, as we have done every time we have met. I have a whole bunch of new ones to discuss with you. Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Christy. So, Ashok's research, scientific contribution, and scholarship is obviously very well represented by the score of a huge score of his students who are here present in this room today, and also the various speakers, very distinguished speaker and his former students will be speaking at this technical workshop today between 2 to 4. But I have the pleasure to introduce the next speaker as a representative among his students, and that is Professor Suman Banerjee, who will speak a few words about Ashok.
So I think even though you're gone for many years from the university you graduate, the day you come back after a long time and you stand in front of your PhD advisor and some committee members, you again get a little nervous. So but it's a great honor. Thank you for having me. And I'm really excited to see this huge landmark. I was talking to a colleague the other day and I said, I'm going to my advisor's 50th. And he was not so impressed. After a while, I told him, it's not his 50th birthday. It's his 50th year at Maryland. Oh my God. So congratulations. So I'll share a few anecdotes from my time as a student. So perhaps a little different perspective. Some of previous speakers, Samir and Amol, spoke about the open door, and they would see Ashok there all the time. As a student, it's a little bit different, right? So I used to try and come in the morning, especially my first semester when I'm working with Ashok, and I come in the morning, and his office was sort of around the corner from my office. I will go there. First thing I'll do is I'll peek and see, oh, the door is open. That means I couldn't come here before him, and that's so embarrassing. So he's always there before the students. Of course, we used to be pretty late evening folks, not anymore perhaps, but that was very motivating in a way to see that he's always there doing things, talking to us, comes to our offices, gives us advice. So one other interesting anecdote I wanted to share was one of the first projects I worked on was on estimating network path capacities. Professor Agarwala introduced that to me. By the way, you can tell that I'm a little bit later in that 52 because I'm more comfortable calling him Professor Agarwala. So he asked me to look at this problem, and basically we were collecting a lot of we're doing a lot of measurements between hosts on the internet, and then we had to figure out what's going on, how should we estimate or predict path latencies and so on, or capacities if needed. And so we would run experiments, and huge amounts of data will come out, and we will sometimes sit in his office and look at these data spreadsheets and things like that. And Professor Agarwala said, don't just look at the data. We have to come up with a model. We have to kind of model this so that it's worthwhile. And so we were working out something. And one day, after a few hours of discussion, he suddenly went to the board and said, okay, I think this is going to be the model. He just wrote it down. I said, this data, I can't tell. I mean, how do you do this? He said, well, go prove it. So really, what was amazing at that time was, it took me 3 days. That was the model. But it took me 3 days to prove it. And I was wondering, how did you even see that from all this data? And of course, he has done a lot of prior work in that space. So it was pretty exciting to me that you can actually think of this in a certain intuitive way and come up with solutions. That was kind of a very early learning for me when I was a student. The last thing I will mention to you is it took me a while to get my PhD done. And at the end of my PhD, I was talking to him and we were discussing what are good strategies to do PhD, how should you think about things. So he tells me that, oh, the way, the time it takes a student to finish a PhD really depends on when the student realizes that you have to do the PhD, you have to work and earn it. The advisor is not going to give you the PhD. It's not, I'll give you 5 problems, you solve it, it's done. I said, oh, that's very interesting. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? I've been here 7 years. I said, well, I could have told you earlier, it wouldn't have made sense to you. So you have to really understand it. So this is one of those messages I really enjoyed thinking about. And these days, I tell all my graduating students the same thing, usually after they graduate. So thank you again. It was really a pleasure. I really cherished those years where I was here and worked with you.
Thank you, Suman. Of course, as we already know, Ashok's focus has always been on the people and making everyone better and smarter. And but it goes far beyond. He treats us, not everybody like his family, but really an integral part of his life. And with that philosophy, he has also contributed to a department in terms of mentorship. So next, I would like to introduce one of our junior colleagues and one of our newest, it's not quite the youngest assistant professor, but one of our newer assistant professor, Nilupan Roy.
Thank you, Ming. So if Suman is nervous, you can imagine how nervous I can be. I was not even born when he became a full professor. So it's truly an honor for me to be here and speak a few words. for Ashok mentorship and his guidance. So being here, so when I was not fortunate enough, like many of you here, to work with Ashok for many years, but right after joining here in 2019, we have started working on multiple projects together, and almost from very first day. And I've gathered so many stories and experiences already that I can keep talking for multiple hours together. But I'll keep it short. I will just share one thing that I really enjoyed and learned and felt when I worked with Ashok. So all of us, most of us kind of heard this advice growing up that you have to be, if you have to choose between being right and being kind, always choose to be kind. Okay? And when it comes to research, pragmatism is kind of the key to be successful. While working with Ashok, and many of you will share the same feeling, that you learn that you do not need to choose. These are no longer a conflicting options to be right and kind. You can be at the same time right and unmistakably particular about your principles while doing research. At the same time, we can be lovingly kind and caring for our students. So thank you so much, Ashok, for teaching me that and sharing your, opening up your heart for us to learn more. So thank you so much for being a friend, philosopher, and guide, even to me, such a junior faculty member here. I'm looking forward to working with you for many years to come and learning from you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next, we have a CS graduate student who just recently defended his PhD. Although that he does not work with Ashok directly, he has taken Ashok's classes, and he also was Ashok's TA. So Rohan Chandra.
Thank you so much. So, hey everyone, it's great to be here. And it's a lot of people mentioned the open door, which is very important because that was like the first half of my speech. But then I realized all the people who came up here, many of them started working with Professor Agrawala in the 80s, 70s, 90s. They all noticed the open door, and so did I. So he's been doing this for the past 50 years, the same thing. And what I wanted to add was that it's not by accident, it's by design. And he always tells his students that I'm always my office except when I'm not. The other thing I wanted to just build upon is the fact that someone mentioned his house being in a very remote area. I wanted to add that it's so remote that if you've ever been there, even Google Maps cannot find it. It always directs you to the road beside it. Before I came to UMD, well, I started by being his TA for his computer networks class, and then I would later enrolled in his graduate student class on context-aware systems. But even before that, I interned at the University of Maryland in 2015 with him during the summer. And I was an undergrad student and I wanted to do a PhD. I love math. I wanted to do something in math. So I went up to him and I said, I want to do math. I want to do a PhD in math. And then he sat me down and people talked about the advice and he gives advice. His advice was, don't do math, switch to CS. And it'll serve you better in the long run, more money, everything. And yeah, and that's where I am right now. I recently graduated. Well, not graduated, defended, that's what. And I just defended and I'm starting this whole professor thing. This room's full of professors. And I just wanted to say that if, in the next 50 years, if I'm half as successful as Professor Agarwala, I'll call myself lucky. And I want to congratulate you on these 50 years. And I'm lucky to have shared in a few of them.
Thank you, Rohan. We have another student representative, and that's Mara Kai, who was a who was a graduate student here and finished, and has been working as a research scientist with Ashok.
I have not finished my PhD. I finished my undergrad here. That is when I had the pleasure to meet Dr. Agrawala, and he persuaded me to try out research with him. And 5 years later, I am still here working very closely with him. Every week, I'm always learning something new. Thank you, Dr. Agrawala, for always cultivating this safe and open place to encourage us to think independently and critically, to ask important questions, to dream big, and thank you for supporting us. Thank you.
So Professor Shara Sharma from Bowie State would also like to speak a few words.
Thank you very much. So I'm Sharat Sharma, a professor in computer science and director of Virtuality Lab at Bowie State University, a few miles from here. I had a pleasure of interacting with Professor Agarwala for a long time, for the last 15 years since I've been at Bowie. 15 years and to 50 years will be a long time. And I would probably sing the same words. He has been like a father to me. My father was a professor at IIT Roorkee in India. And there have been a lot of times I've taken advice from him, not just professional advice, but more about personal advice, sometimes dealing with people, life, meditation, stress. So there's so many off topics that we have talked about. And I don't know if you guys probably would be knowing, there's a lot of interest and a lot of expertise in meditation and spirituality. I really love our conversation on those topics. But apart from that, I'm really honored to be here, and 50 years of doing anything is a great achievement. There is a saying, some people are born great, some people achieve greatness, and some people have greatness thirst upon them. But Professor Agarwala, he has achieved greatness through his work, through his dedication, and I could see all the students and everybody talking about his achievement. That's a great accomplishment. Congratulations to your life. Congratulations to your journey.
So one of our last student representative is Yoongjun Lee, who is representing the UMD College Park Computer Science Students and Alumni Association to speak a few words.
Thank you, Ming, for the introduction. Hi, Professor Ashok Agarwala. Big congratulations for your 50-year-long research journey at the University of Maryland College Park. Personally, I thank you for your great guidance for the Future Faculty Fellow, because I'm one of the Future Faculty Fellow, including Rohan as well. So really thank you for that. Actually, the main reason why I'm here today is actually, this is the one that I'm holding on the left hand. So this is actually the Appreciation Award prepared by 7 Korean PhD students who received their PhDs from you. Let me actually name them here. So Nam-sung-woo, Sang-hyuk-sun, Chi-ha-kim, Sam-hyuk-no, Soo-muk-mun, Son-ho-choi, and Hyun-sung-um. And actually, I forgot to mention their affiliation. They're doing, they're either working in industry and academia, and they're actually big names in Korea. And Nam Sung-woo is former president and CEO at Samsung LSI. And Sang-hyuk-sun is former president at DGIST, is one of the research and technology focused universities in Korea. And Chi-ha-kim is a former department head at Postech. And Sam-hyuk-no is a dean at UNIST, which is also one of the research and technology focused universities in Korea. And is an ACM fellow and IEEE fellow. And Soo-muk-mun, also professor at Seoul National University. And Son-ho-choi is a former department head and a professor at Bowie State University. And yeah, I think last but not least, but Hyun-sang is a former department vice head and a professor at the Seoul National University. And I actually have a quick brief message from them. So let me just read it for you. So dear Professor Ashok K. Agrawala, we, your Korean PhDs, sincerely celebrate your 50 years in the CS department at the University of Maryland College Park. And we always thank you for your greatest advice. Best regards. And this is the Appreciation Award in recognition of 50 years of dedicated service in the CS at the University of Maryland College Park. Thank you. Actually, I forgot to tell one thing. There's a flower, and which represent actually their messages as well. And Professor, you help, a lot of flowers to bloom. But actually, there are many flowers above to bloom based on your guidance. So thank you so much. Korea is really take photos. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. They really want to see, things. Wow.
So isn't that amazing? To show the people you touched how far and wide their impact has been. Todd, can you bring up those slides for me, please? So I want to share with you guys a little bit. Take a moment to share that. Yesterday, what we're talking about, I went home and put some words. The words of students were speaking for Ashok: passionate, focused, challenging, open, willing to listen. Open office, you heard about that a few times today. Generous, questioning what's possible, questioning what's not possible, and questioning, believing in the impossible. You heard that from faculty and so forth. That's to me is an amazing tribute to Ashok and Professor Agarwala. And you heard these numbers: 50 years, 52 PhDs, and counting. By the way, they're not done yet, right? So they're counting. They're still in the pipeline they're working, and you might even hear from one who might be graduating very recently. You will hear from one. Over 50 masters, thousands of graduates, undergraduate students. Teaching, supporting, encouraging to do your best. That's what he does for his students. So you heard again and again, Professor Ashok Agarwala is really a gift to his students. And that was really a tribute that you presented, a gift to a student. And likewise. And I told you a story of Thanksgiving yesterday. I won't go into that just for the sake of time. But the students are gifts to Professor Agarwala. That's how he feels like. He's a gift to a student, but students are gifts to give to him. So we've been kind of knocking around how to create a legacy for Ashok, and we really need your help. That's what next slide, please. So we've announced yesterday that we have created Kimberly and I work with the administration here to create a scholarship to preserve Ashok's legacy, and we're calling it the Professor Ashok Agarwala Students Maryland Promise Scholarship. So you already heard about Professor Ashok Agarwala and students. Hopefully that heard enough of that. Let me unpack the last three words. What does Maryland Promise Scholarship mean? And Todd, can you show us the video, please?
Or going to college is pretty much unheard of. It doesn't happen. Like where we're from, it just doesn't. This chord is Avid. These two are National Honor Society. So yeah, I got 4 chords.
He told me in elementary school he was going to go to college. And I said to myself, well, I don't know how you going to go.
Because when you have to think where you're going to get money from to continue your education, then you have to make decisions. Do I eat or do I pay for school?
That is my grandmother, my dad's mom. That's my mom, me, and my dad. My name is Joyce Maker. I went to University of Maryland I graduated in '78. My 2 sisters also graduated from there. My son graduated from there. We made a turtle cake for him when he graduated. My niece graduated from there, and my mother worked there for a short time. And she had a parking permit right in the middle of campus. So I got to park right in the middle of campus. That was the best benefit. This is my mom's. She is that little teen girl right there. She would have loved to gone to college, but she couldn't afford to go. We thought, in honor of her, if we could help somebody else do that, it would really be nice. You know, the fact that someone gets the opportunity that she wished she had in her name, she would just be so happy about it.
Here comes a scholarship. Oh my God, thank you, Jesus, thank you.
We trusted Maryland to choose someone, and we're very happy with the person that they chose.
I was so excited.
I cried. I cried, and I cried.
I know that she was crying and she was elated. It was a burden lifted off of everybody.
Because this is what he been working for.
Studying computer science, I actually love it. I want to be a software engineer, but like somewhere in the gaming. Yeah, those are my aspirations.
Because I believe with this opportunity, it is going to open doors for him that otherwise would not have opened.
College just isn't a thing that happens where I'm from. And then let alone a scholarship, an academic scholarship for college.
They've made a way out of no way for him. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful.
Whoever's donating, I just want to thank you, thank you, thank you a million times, because it is such a blessing.
I just want them to know that the people that they help, and I should say bless, it breaks chains, it breaks cycles, and it changes lives.
So I am so delighted.
I'm just so thankful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
There you go. That's what the word scholarship means here. So it's very important, very, very impactful at Maryland. And Todd, if you want to put the slide, please, next slide up. So here's the goal. The goal we have set up is to establish this as an endowment, that to provide a full scholarship at a University of Maryland student with a preference for a CS student for use in perpetuity. So Professor Agarwala and his students' name live forever. And initially, we said the challenge we set up is to raise a minimum of $250,000 for it to become an endowment for in perpetuity. And what's exciting is that we have the other word that you've been seeing, this Maryland Promise, and that's a James Clark Foundation that does a one-to-one matches. So we don't, to get to $250,000, all we have to raise is about $125,000. And we got a head start. So we're starting with $50,000 right off the bat. So all we need to do is your help to get the minimum. We would like to blow past it and see how big a fund we can do this thing. But all we really need to do today to think in terms of is let's get to our first goal of additional $75,000 to meet the minimum goal. And next slide, please. And to do that, and how you can help is, let me introduce Irene Lukoff. Irene is from the development office at the College of CMNS, Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. And she'll tell you the mechanics of how you do this stuff.
Thank you, Ashok. And again, good afternoon. And it's really been a tremendous pleasure for me an honor to be here and participate in this celebration. So I want to express on behalf of CMNS Development our heartiest congratulations on this remarkable milestone, Ashok. And it's just been tremendous. Thank you. As Ashok T has mentioned, he and Kimberly have generously made a lead commitment towards this challenge. And what we are asking you to do is to help us raise the remaining $75,000. And the way you do it is you can go online, you have the QRC code, you will see little stanchions placed on the tables outside. You could use that code, or you can complete one of these pledge forms and return it to me either today or later when you go and think more about it. This is an open fund, and we welcome friends, family, students, colleagues, former colleagues, future colleagues, and future students, whoever would like to help us in meet this goal. And what I would like to say is that this is not just about giving and giving to the Clark Challenge, but it's about honoring the department, helping to grow the department, the prestige of this premier department at Maryland. And it's about promoting and perpetuating Dr. Ashok Agarwala's legacy. And it's a legacy of intellect, caring, and advice. And just again, I wish you the next 50 years to be as productive and as successful. So thank you very much. Again, I will be out, and if you have any questions, we have the site for this fund right on the Maryland website, giving website. And I also urge you to go to the Maryland Promise website to see the impact stories and to see how these scholarships have really made an impact and changed lives. So thank you very much for your attention, and we hope that you will help us meet our goal.
Thank you, Irene. Well, okay. I have been very moved by all the remarks that have been made during these last 1 hour or so. It is a true reflection of the man, the father, the role model that I have known in the last 5 years. Thank you, Ashok. And I also want to thank everyone who are here and all the speakers who share your story with all of us. This is really a reflection also of the value and the experiences that our faculty and students have experienced. And I believe that this is a reflection of, through your success and your career of what this department has done and also what Ashok has done. So thank you again, Ashok. So to close off, I would like to introduce the man that you have heard mentioned already multiple times, and that is Professor Agrawala, who obviously everyone knows by now. He is Ashok's son, and Ashok is his father. And Manish, I just want to say a couple words. Manish is someone I also know for many years. We are in the same field and same area, and I'm really, really proud to be standing here and introduce him as the Forrest Basket Professors of Computer Science, and he's also the director of the Brown Institute for Media Innovation at Stanford University. Manish?
So thank you, Ming. So, when Ming asked me a couple of days ago if I could introduce my dad, I, of course, immediately said yes. I was super, super excited. I mean, what a rare and just cool opportunity to get to introduce your father. right? It's not something that happens all the time. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and I realized Ming was kind of setting me up here. Because, of course, the one crowd in which my dad almost certainly needs no introduction is the one here today, right? You, his students, his friends, his colleagues, you are the people that know him best. And, you know, I thought, well, what can I tell you about him that you don't already know about him? We've heard so much about him yesterday and today. You already know all about his research and his accomplishments there. You know all about the things that he has done at and for the University of Maryland. You know that he loves coffee and he loves gadgets. Most importantly, I think, you know that he is a patient and nurturing teacher. He's certainly nurtured me and Geetika. She did a great job of telling you all about the things that he taught us very, very patiently growing up. Multiplication, programming, how to mow the lawn, driving, all these things. I have really benefited from 50 years of nurturing from my dad. But it's not just us. You know, over the last 2 days, what really struck me is just how much he has nurtured all of you as well, right? These stories are really, really meaningful. In fact, my dad is so well known as a nurturer that even Wikipedia knows about it. His Wikipedia page quotes a research article from, I think it's from 2004 or so, but it ranks him as the 27th top nurturer in computer science. And when I first saw that, when I first read that, I thought, wow, you know, number 27 across all computer scientists, that's just amazing. But then I thought a little bit more about it, and I thought, well, why just number 27, right? And so I took a close look at the research paper and the 26 names ahead of his and the model that they built. And, you know, I realize I'm a little biased here, but I really think there are some flaws in their model. Obviously, he should be ranked number 1. And so, you know, I was hoping that maybe some of us after this meeting could get together and correct the flaws in the ranking model. Now, one of the things that you might not know about my dad is that hand in hand with the nurturing is the joy that he has gotten out of working with all of you. For my dad, the most important thing about his job has been the people that he works with. So bear with me for a moment. I was a big comic book fan growing up, and you may have heard about the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Has people heard about this? Yeah, good. Well, what I want to think about is the ACU, the Agrawala Cinematic Universe. And it consists of all of us here today, right? Dad and all of his collaborators. And growing up, Dad would regularly tell us about all the cool things, all the adventures that he and you were having in the ACU, right? He would tell us about, you know, Pinpoint, Maruti, Horus, Emergency. He would tell us about the books he was writing on real-time systems. He would tell us about Umiax. He would tell us about the Fujitsu lab, and on and on and on. And what really struck me is that whenever he talked about these things, he always emphasized you, his collaborators, the superheroes of the ACU. So writer Annie Dillard has a well-known quote. She says, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. What we do with this hour and that one is what we are doing." In the case of my dad, he has been spending his hours, his days, his life working with all of you. And so I'm really, really happy to be here to celebrate the things that you and he have done together over his long career at the University of Maryland. So with that, I'd like to welcome the 27th top researcher or nurturer in computer science, currently the number 27, Ashok Agarwala.
Well, this is the only moment in my life where I am so humbled, so overwhelmed, so touched that I can't tell you. It is really, a while back, I was talking to a colleague of mine who spent his 50 years at Bechtel Corporation. Why? Because he was showing a nice gold watch that he got at Bechtel Corporation. Now I'll tell him what a university does when you have spent 50 years there. This certainly outperforms anything that a corporation can give. Well, folks, you have heard all kinds of stories. And I know that I'm between you and the lunch, so I'll only take 2 hours, no more, promise. What I'm going to do is to share some secrets of all how I practice things in my life here at Maryland. As you heard, I've been working with the students, and I absolutely love to work with the students. You've heard a lot about the PhD students that I work with and bits and pieces that they remember, which I've coolly forgotten, like Suman's quote and things like that. Because somehow I don't think about those. I just say as they come to me naturally at that point of time. But another thing you heard is that I've been teaching operating system course, now CMSC 412, and the other course I teach is computer networking. I can guarantee that if you go and ask my colleagues, what do I do? The answer will be either networking or operating systems. Because all the different areas that I have worked in, I've kept well hidden. Nobody knows except the students that work with it. And one of the interesting facets in that has been that I have been brought up as a problem solver. So I'll go into an area, try to find the most difficult problem and try to tackle that. And that started out with Jeff Moore's thesis on workload characterization, because at that time, for mainframe computers, nobody was able to touch that problem. And all the benchmarks and other things were made totally arbitrarily. So we started with that and worked on that kind of problem. Why? Because I was specially instructed by our STEAM department chairman that I better switch from pattern recognition. So I went into that. And the kinds of things that went on the students, but the point I was trying to make, and by the way, I can tell you stories after stories about my students. Just one quick one. There was a period in 70s, late 70s, then a student of mine and I used to meet at regular intervals at different fast food restaurants over lunch, exchange some pieces of paper. And this person used to work for a federal agency. I'm just glad that FBI never found out who Ron Larson was or who I was. Otherwise, we would have been in big trouble. Remember that, Ron? Right. So that's the kind of thing that I can tell, and I can tell many more stories. But the story that I want to share with you is that even more than the PhD students with whom I worked, and as Nick mentioned, my premise has been that At bachelor's, we teach people how to work. At master's, we teach people how to learn. And at PhD, we teach people how to think. And the only way I know how to teach somebody how to think is to think with them. And in that regards, anybody who works with PhD with me, one condition is that at least for 6 months, they have to curse me inside out. Otherwise, they're not doing something right, or I'm not doing something right. But that goes over to undergraduate students also. If I start counting the number of students who took 412 operating system course, or 417, 412 is known to be the most difficult course, only 4 credit, 400 level course. And my typical advice to students who take that course is that that semester they should forget about mundane things like eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom, because that's the kind of time it's going to take. Every semester, students really work hard and curse me. And I treat that curse as an honor badge, because the same students 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later come back and tell what kind of transformation that course brought about in their lives. So there are lots of undergraduate students who have corrupted very successfully. As I keep saying, my job as a professor is to corrupt the young minds, and I'm always looking for young minds. A room full of them right here, and many have gone through my suffering things. The other thing that I keep talking about is that I'm a good brainwasher. So I keep telling my colleagues or friends, kids who are in high school, that if you want them to be brainwashed, send them to me for a summer, and they will be brainwashed. But all the kidding aside, one of the secrets I told you is that what I work on, I don't share, because most of my colleagues don't know what I'm doing. And I do what I do by just doing what I want to do, as has been said. The other part that was said was that I have tried to keep the best interest of the university, of the college, of the department ahead of my interest. And that applies to my students also. It has always been what is in their best interest. I may have mentioned it yesterday, that my basic agreement with them is they are supposed to dream big. And it's my job to provide as many resources and support as I can for them to realize their dreams. And I believe that if they're successful, I'll be really proud to say that I was the advisor of Glenn Reichard, or Lon Larson, or Karen Gordon, or so many. I can't repeat all 52 names. But I've followed that principle, and I think that it has served me well. In the same vein, it has been my belief that at a university, anything that gets done at the faculty level. Administrators can pass laws and become roadblocks or other things, but to do any research, to commit to any kind of thing, faculty has to do it. And at times we have to, as faculty, we have a lot of power and we hardly ever exercise it. But on one side, I have very successfully avoided accepting any administrative position at this university in the last 50 years. And that is a key to success in the kinds of things that I've done. But at the same time, I've had the privilege to participate in activities at all levels of this university, starting from the university system to the campus level, to the college level, department level, etc., etc. And anytime I was convinced that something is good for the university, I will not take a back seat and take a strong stand. Just one example. In 1970s, the basic mainframe was the one that was providing service to the whole campus. I was working very closely with computer science center people because we required the log tapes and other things for Jeff to do his dissertation. on workload characterization. By the time the end of 70s came, I was convinced that having that kind of centralized computing at campus is not the way to go. So I wrote a memorandum to file expressing my opinion, that technical opinion, that the workload should be decomposed and we should have multiple medium-sized machines on campus. Gave one copy of it to the then director of computer science. We were in the same building as the computer science center was. Next day, I was declared persona non grata in that building. Everybody in computer center was against me. Fortunately, at that time, then they were called vice president in the University System of Maryland, who was in charge of some of this computing, he heard about me. And then Britt Kerwin was the provost, he heard about it. To cut the long story short, Glenn Reichert came and modified the whole place. Most of the kinds of things that I wrote in my memo came true, except there was no way for me to anticipate that IBM will introduce IBM PCs and Glenn will get IBM to donate a whole bunch of PCs. But overall, it worked. There are other examples of that. It was briefly mentioned that the intellectual property. I found out that there was a committee being formed. I volunteered to be on it. It took about 8 years of consistent work on that committee to bring it so that this university's intellectual property policy is one of the most progressive ones of any state university that I know of. And that still holds. And you can find my thumbprints all over the place in that. Another thing that I've done is cut across the campus. One of the difficult things to do is to go from educational side of the house to the administrative side of the house. Has anybody here worked with anybody on the administrative side? One, two. Oh, you were on the administrative side, so you worked with yourself. Typically, there is significant amount of distrust of these researcher types. What do they know about the practical reality? Well, I cut through those boundaries. And to this date, I've worked with the police department here. We developed this emergency response system. We have worked with the facilities. They never had, the only map that was available on campus was the one that was supplied by the parking department. Okay, not by the facilities. Anyway, I and somebody from computer center or IT department, we collaborated, got the GIS project going. And right now it is a major kind of thing that the facilities does. Lately, we have been collaborating with facilities to get all the sensor data from this building. Guess how many sensors are there? More than 6,000. And we are getting all of that data right here. I heard about public health department, public health, School of Public Health. They were having a project on determining how flu propagates on the campus. And they needed some location type of software. So we started collaboration with them. So I have not hesitated at all in establishing these across the board type of collaborations. A couple of other things I would like to share. As has been mentioned, I like to do a lot of head scratching. And as the end of 1990s was coming about and the dot-com boom was sort of fading, but a lot of research and other things in computer science, it shifted to the industry. I was convinced that we required a new model of interaction with the industry. My first effort in that was to start a lab we call Mind Lab and attract Fujitsu to set up its East Coast research lab with us over their choice of going to MIT, Princeton, or Carnegie Mellon. And not only that, they hired John Agard, one of my students, to become the director of that lab. Okay? It so happens that the economic downturn took place and university had no idea how to work with the industry at that time, none whatsoever. Didn't go very far. But I put in the effort. Lately, I've been trying that again in something I call the hub, in which the idea is to have collaborative activities going on with the industry. And we have worked in that with Leidos, we have worked with Dell, we have some other smaller companies, a couple of those representatives are here, who we are working with, again, to find a new model to interact with the industry. As I look at the future of computer science, I'm convinced that we cannot judge the success of computer science on the basis of the papers published in JSCM. We have to really reach out and touch everybody. What role is computer science playing in the department, in the university? Is there any research project that comes on board that doesn't have a computer science part? So we have to get up and recognize our goal in that regards of touching, influencing, and playing the lead in the university on computer science and computer science activities. What it takes? I've been trying. We went all the way up to the president to make a pitch about that. Clearly, I haven't applied my brainwashing techniques to the president of the university yet, but we'll see what happens in that. Another kind of thing that I've been thinking about is the whole higher education and the model of higher education. How much is the student debt right now? How many $1 trillion? And by law, that cannot be overwritten even if somebody declares bankruptcy. So one way is that, and of course, the state universities are suffering from the state budget cuts for a very long time. So what kind of solution can we come up with? Clearly, the steps that Ashok Agarwala lined up about getting donations, really great step. But is that going to address the bigger problem? Let me propose one solution that comes to my mind. What if anybody who employs a graduate from a university was to send a nominal sum, $20, $50 a month to that university? It can be a steady stream of income, and the longer a university is in existence, the more money they get. I believe that some such kind of thing, while this is no less difficult than changing the healthcare system in this country, but that's a kind of solution that I believe is required, or some different thinking on some of these topics is required and essential for us to move forward in this country or in the world for that matter. Anyway, folks, I'm not telling any more stories. I'm just sharing some of these tidbits. And I, again, thank you so much. What you're honoring is not just me, but all of you who I've had the privilege to work with, interact with, feed some coffee, laugh together, cry together, conspire together, all of that. Thank you so much. And let me, thank you.
Before we adjourn, I want to do a quick thank you. Thank you to everyone who has been behind the scene managing this thing. And we have a team. I think Miriam is still sitting outside, probably manning the booths. Miriam, Richa, Mathur, Todd, wherever you are, hiding back over there. Todd Holder, there you go. Thank you, Todd. And of course, our department chair, Matthias, who's really generously supporting this event. Thank you very much. So we have a we cut a lot into our,
We have about 20 minutes.
we have 20 minutes to have a quick lunch before we start the next event at 2:00. And that'll be a really fun-filled event. We're going to take a deeper dive into all the research that Professor Ashok Agarwala, and it's going to be upstairs.
The room is going to be 1116.
1116, room number 1116. You'll get it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can take the stair or you can take the elevator.
But the lunch is outside first. First we have lunch, and then we're going to go up to 1116 to have and you get a feel for what the new classrooms look like there. Right? That's the whole. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Meng, for organizing.
And just for those alumni and visitors who visit from out of town, if anyone is interested in seeing our rooftop, and if it doesn't rain, I will be right after there to take anyone who's interested for our rooftop garden tour. Okay, enjoy your lunch.